Planning of the risk management. I think the planning, as you have learned in any of the knowledge area, this is not done throughout the project. This is just done at typical time slots. Of course, it is done at the start of the endeavor, but later moving on, as the changes happen, it gets updated at that particular stage only. It's not done throughout. It's done only at some intervals. So let's have a quick look at the outputs. We just have one output. We have to create the risk management plan at the end of the process. So what happens here is we create a risk strategy here, right? So which is basically the approach of the complete risk management. There'll be roles identified, responsibilities identified. There is a risk breakdown structure. How do you put it? You have learned the WBS, right? Work breakdown structure. So similarly, there is this risk breakdown structure. Let me make use of the pen again. So we have some levels identified: level 0, level 1, and level 2. So firstly, all the sources of the project risk are listed here, and then they categorize it. Let's say 2 or 3 categories. First thing could be a technical risk. Second thing could be commercial risk. Third thing could be management risk, or some external risk. So we have categorized all the list to some different types of risks. That is level 1. And then from this, we know who can handle this category of risks. So, and then we will assign it to the right person. So the tree gets divided to branches and then further smaller branches. So similar to the work breakdown structure, we have this risk breakdown structure. What else there could be? There could be also a risk probability definition. So in the risk probability definition, what happens is they scale the risk. When I say scale, it's like we tell that, okay, this particular risk is very much possible to be realized in comparison to the risk that is almost zero. So the risk which is least probable will be given 1% or 2% probability. The risk which has maximum probability, that will be given like 80%, 90% probability. So again, whether this highly probable risk, will it impact any of my objective? So let me again make use of the pen. It's like we have probabilities listed: 70% probability, 60% probability, like this to maybe 30% probability. All these risks are identified, they are listed. Here we have the name of the risks and then the probabilities associated with it. And then we have components listed here. Components, when I say, for example, time, whether the time is being affected here. If it is being affected, yes, let's say, greater than 3 months, right? So if this risk happens, we are going to affect our timeline by 3 months. Just an example. So similarly, if this risk 60% probability happens, it can affect the cost, let's say 1 million additional cost. So it doesn't affect the time, but it can affect the cost in this example. But there could be cases that it will affect both the time and cost, like 1 month and maybe $50,000. So such variables or the objectives, we can keep on adding it. So we have covered time, we have covered cost, maybe customer quality and quality. Does this risk directly affect the quality? Does it affect the safety? So all this probability mapping is also done in the risk management plan. So that's not all. I think we can add so many more things to it. The risk management plan is a very vast, very huge document. It needs a separate lesson to be understood. What and all things are included here. You can consider like the impact matrix can be created, the stakeholder risk appetite. That is also something that I just explained. Multiple reporting formats are there. How the data is being represented, that is there. So many things that are related to risk are listed here in this risk management plan. Okay, let's understand what the inputs are. The project charter, of course, it can be used. As this risk planning is done at the beginning of the project, there may not be majority of the other components already present. We are talking about project management plan. So whatever components that are available, basically all the subsidiary management plans, you can consider only them for the risk management, because this is done at the very beginning of the project. This is not done at the half stage of the project, because risks are very, very important. Although this is listed at the end of this course, while you execute the project, this risk management plan is done at a very early stage, right? So any other component of the project management plan, it's just half cooked, right? So but still you can consider that as the input here. So similarly, the project documents, they are also not quite mature. So, but whatever documents that are available to you by the other stakeholders or from the previous projects experience, all of them can be considered here. And by default, the organization, enterprise, environmental factors, and organization process assets can be considered. This is just the same process here. Tools and techniques. An expert, again, somebody who is familiar with the risk handling process. So he can be consulted here. When we talk about data analysis, we have already discussed multiple data analysis techniques that we learned. So all of them can come handy here. And of course, meetings will also be very helpful for creating the risk management plan. So I'm moving to the next process, identifying the risks. This, unlike the previous ones, this is done throughout the project because we have to identify risks all through the project. Every activity we do, there might be a new risk associated with it. We might not have seen it at the planning stage. So this identification of the risks is done throughout the project. So one more important thing is that this becomes an input to create the risk responses. We have not covered risk responses yet. That is the next process to come. So if we identify the risks first, then we can work on the responses to these identified risks. So this will become input to the response process. Let's see the outputs. We have three outputs to bring out when we are finishing this. First thing is the risk register. This will again seek inputs from qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis. We have not yet discussed that process here, but whatever is the output of those analysis, we can use them as the inputs and update our risk register. Risk report, it typically contains all the major reports from different analysis that we did before. The project documents, like assumption logs, the risk register, lessons learned register, all of them gets updated here. Okay, let's have a look at the inputs. The default ones: project management plan, multiple components can be referred here, like requirements, schedule, costs, all of them can be referred. Similarly with the project documents, when we talk about multiple agreements, the memorandum of understanding, non-disclosure agreements, all this is referred. Why? Because we have to understand the acceptance criteria. What did our customer accept to? What did our vendor accept to? So if the acceptance is understood, the risks are also well understood. So again, the procurement documentation. This is something important. We can spend a few seconds here. Procurement documentation, why is it important? Because within the organization, we have a lot of control. As a project manager, we have a lot of control on many of the processes that are being done. We can go and directly influence the person who is deviating the process. But at the vendor stage, where we are procuring the components or the raw materials, we have no control. Things will work blindly on the trust here. Of course it will be written on a certificate or the final quality report of the project, but process itself, it is not directly controlled by us. We can ask them, okay, give us your process reports, give us your flow charts and all, but we cannot directly go and control that operator sitting in that vendor place. So it's very, very important that we consider this as a input while we identify risk. This is the most risky area in the complete project process. So, and then we have two default processes that we should consider. I'm saying default, that doesn't mean these are unimportant. These are very, very important. We also have to consider enterprise environmental factor, organizational process assets. They are so important that they are available in each and every process. So just because they are default doesn't mean they are not important. They are the most important ones. So please focus there. Let's move on to the tools. Expert judgment. Of course, the experts are consulted here also. The data gathering tools like brainstorming can be used, checklists can be used, different data analysis techniques like SWOT analysis, root cause analysis, everything that we have learned before, they can be used here. We are talking about interpersonal skills, the soft skills that can be used to boost the morale, the leadership skills, all these things come handy. Prompt lists. Okay, this is something new we have not learned. Prompt, as the name says, this is just an pre-identified tasks or pre-identified risks that could occur. So what do we mean by pre-identification? You can consider some potential risks coming from different sources, different areas. Like for example, from political factors, many risks could come. From economic factors, many risks could come. Some technological factors, some risks could come. Some legal factors, many risks could come. Like all these are prompts. When I say prompt, the PMBOK guide writes it as PESTEL. These are just prompts. Like we are sitting in front of a blank paper, we don't know what risks to note. So these are something to start with. These are the prompts that we should work on. What does P mean? Political sources, risks from political sources. For example, government says some law or regulation has changed the emission norms. From tomorrow, you're not supposed to make your vehicle which is producing more, CO2 levels or NO2 levels, something like this. So that awareness has to be there. So similarly, economic, whatever the economic decisions of the company within the organization that might directly affect the risks, the social risks, the locality that we are working on the product. Similarly, the technology, we are working 24/7 on a technology that is going to be obsolete starting next year. There is no point in working. So such risks can be identified. Environmental, very very important. If your raw material contains some substance that might damage the environment, that might damage the fish, or you are producing a lot of waste which is going to the water, all these things are important in the environmental factors. Of course, the legal ones. Are you breaking some law by creating this product? If you are a gun making company, right? So all these things can be prompts to identify the risks. So finally, the meetings, they also come handy. I think we are done with this. We can move to the next process.